Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, and joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. We will maybe we can etch these things on our tombstones or whatever,
Yeah.
our grave markers.
I'm going with dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah, I think you like that one the best. Yeah. All right, plenty of news. We were off last week. I'm doing my usual churchy thing. Here it pops up once in a while, but it gives me.
I love in those pictures. They say there's a bunch of elders in those pictures. I look at those pictures. They're like one elder, Don. You, other guys are youngers.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a misnomer.
Quick advancement over there.
when you think of elder, you think of people my age or older, maybe, or some our age or older. But yeah, those guys are pretty young.
That's cool though. Keeps you young.
Well, they do. I mean, it's I spend enough time with those guys, and sometimes I have to think like, I remember I'm like 3 times their age now.
I know.
But they don't make me feel that I am as old as I am. That's
yeah.
So
which is pretty cool.
It does. It keeps my mind going. And since I don't really have a lot else to do after getting fired from so many jobs this year, it's like, why not? All right. News. Let's start off. We'll go ahead and start off with Hurricane Fiona, just real briefly, just because, once again, this is major hurricane. I think it got upgraded to 4 as it headed towards Turks and Caicos, but Puerto Rico just got slammed. I mean, it's been what, 5 years after, was it Hurricane Maria? Was it what it was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they've been devastated yet again. I don't know. I mean, the problem is it's Puerto Rico and where it's located, and things like this, I think, are just going to happen. I don't know what what they can really do to prevent things like this from happening or to mitigate it. But well, you're a guy who lives in that kind of an area. I mean, you've seen this kind of stuff before. You come from Louisiana, I guess. So.
Yeah. I mean, you're obviously in a trade winds, right? You're susceptible to storms, ocean going storms. What struck me though is like the last time this happened, there was this move to get them better prepared and for the next one, and it looks like more government money that didn't go to where it was supposed to go. Right? I don't think they were any better prepared. The first thing that happened is the power, which was supposed to be the top priority to protect and rebuild and strengthen, so forth. Since the last one that went out, and I believe it's still out. Right? So I mean, they didn't fix it. They didn't address it. This is a deal. This is a place where it runs almost entirely on government, aid and so forth, government propped up jobs, government hiring people for the tourism industry. And it can't be competitive. It's subject to U.S. labor laws and so forth. So it's very expensive to have employees there compared to elsewhere in that part of the world. And so, you have a bad situation made worse by leftist governance, and it never gets fixed. And I would be surprised if it ever does get fixed.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. I mean, this is the thing is that, shocking that the liberal leftists that are running Puerto Rico can't actually fix the problem. They've had 5 years to rebuild and prepare for these things because they're going to get hit. I mean, right. Just like you said, trade winds, they are just kind of almost in the eye of the storm. I mean, they're in a path that will set them up.
They're in the path. Yeah.
And as a result of this, they get all this money from the federal government and they can't fix it. But we know third world countries. I mean, we know that there are African nations and all these other. We have seen evidence in our lifetimes of governments that have become corrupt, where just the people who are controlling things basically walk away and feed themselves and take care of things and leave the masses unprepared and unfed, and they're
no one's held accountable, which would, there's corruption everywhere, right? The difference is you catch the people being corrupt and you punish them for it. You don't keep being corrupt.
Right. Yeah. So, and I don't really see, as long as the U.S. allows this type of people to stay in control, there isn't any amount of money that's going to fix this because it's going to continue to be siphoned and diverted. and just, and the population as a whole, they don't know it. I mean, a lot of these countries, a lot of these places like this, um, they have, when you're, especially when you're feeding off the federal, you kind of have your faith, your livelihood, everything is based on that. So you're going, okay, well, who else can I trust? I got to trust them. And then, 5 years later, after this other hurricane, they've gotten screwed again. So,
yeah. So the latest talk, though, the one thing that I did find interesting is, always before these things, like we need to make them a state so we can take care of it. Well, something like 15% of them speak English. It's largely a welfare state, right? There's very little actual independent commerce there now. Some rum companies and so forth, and some tourism, right? Tourism's by far the biggest industry. But you don't get that dynamic, economic. The public sector drowns out everything. So you don't really have an entrepreneurial class. Anybody with any talent gets off the island as quick as they can, right? So you're left with this, you have 30% unemployment, 28, 29% of the employed people work for the government. That's a way, way, way too high figure. And so, you're dealing with all those kind of things, and it cannot and will not get better. And I feel bad for those people, but you have to take charge, and you have to hold people accountable when they don't do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, well, that I don't hold out a lot of hope for our government holding those guys accountable. at least not our current government. All right, Ukraine, boy, I mean, here we are. What do I have it down as now? Day 210, roughly. So I mean,
right.
This is
30 weeks.
This is amazing. I mean, we have talked about this from almost from day one, is that we knew this was going to be a long slog, and Putin had made a mistake by going in there. We could tell by the initial resistance, and boy, I mean, how the Ukrainians have been able to retake areas. They've pushed back the Russians, and now we've got Putin saying he's going to mobilize 300,000 reservists. They haven't done that since what I read was like World War II or something like that.
Right.
And he says he's not bluffing on nuclear threat. So right. What's going on here?
Well, he's down to, if he doesn't take some bigger measures, he's going to lose, right? They're behind. They're not making progress. In fact, they're losing things that they had captured. Their thing was to build a land bridge basically through the southern part of the country to get to a deep water port, which has always been, Russia's sort of thing they needed to do, right? And so they're not doing that, right? That's been taken away from them now. The Ukrainians have retaken that and shut that down, and they're liberating cities all over the place, and they're fighting a lot, leaner, meaner, more motion, more dynamic war than the Russians. The Russians are kind of pinned to old tactics and so forth and have not updated themselves, and now they find themselves in trouble. So he already has people at the line. And I guess the estimate was before all this started was he had pushed about 85% of his chips into the pile already. So what he has left is another 15%. Is that enough to overwhelm the Ukrainians? Maybe, right? It may tip the balance of power, but that's all he's got left, right? So now you're talking about people that you already had people in the field who had only a few days of training. Right now, you have people who may have had training, but it was a long time ago. Now you're having, you're talking about, guys our age now being deployed, right? Some of us are physically able to do that, but I mean, Russia, like our, life expectancy here is, 78, close to 80 years old, right? There, it's in the high 50s, right? We would already be pushing daisies in Russia. Right, on average. So that now you're talking about people a lot closer to the end of their life than most people our age in the United States are, right? Less damage to the body from various things and so forth. And you're also talking about, they had trouble supplying and feeding and caring for and so forth. The people they had there, adding more people makes it an even bigger, less apparently able to be solved logistics problem. So, I mean, he may be hurting himself by injecting these soldiers into this.
Yeah, well, it doesn't do anything for their morale. You
No.
got these people, and as you said, the life expectancy is still low. So you're calling up these people, and as you said, they haven't had any real training. I mean, they're not, our reservists. When you're in the reserves here in the United States, I mean, you go off and you have to pass. You still have to continue to be pass tests and things like that to stay fit. That's not happening in Russia. So yeah, I mean, there could be a whole bunch of fat old guys running around. The lifestyle of the average Russian is probably not very healthy to be, on top of that. So, they've got, so 300,000 may sound like a big number to some people, but let's, you better look at the qualifications and the actual ability to be able to do anything.
What are you really getting there?
It's going to be a fraction, so it's really not going to solve the problem, for them. I mean, heck, there may still be a few reservists left from World War II. For all, the outlier. You got some.
A lot of the problem has been, the Ukrainian military has been more disciplined, right, in every way. And so what are you adding? Undisciplined soldiers, right? Less discipline, less command structure, less training, less familiarity with the weapon systems, right? You're inviting mistakes here.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about, the Ukrainians. I mean, they've been trained by the U.S. and others. I mean, they've gotten good training. The U.S. continues to pour a lot of money into the effort. And it looks like it's definitely been well worth it. We've been doing it. I mean, Ukrainians. I mean, they've pushed far enough in some places, I guess, that they could even strike into Russia. So it's like this is
done that a little bit.
Yeah, this is not part of Putin's calculus. It's like this is not the way it was supposed to work, and they're trying. He's come up with all kinds of schemes, and he's even got Xi. In China is kind of like he's concerned about what Putin has done.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is like you're talking about now. You're taking when wars start, the first people that go are young men, usually not a lot of family attachment, right? It's just sort of the tradition of what it's always been. But now you're talking about taking dads and community leaders and the Russian version of little league coaches out of all these communities, right, and shipping them off to do this. So things this is going to be something the public looks at a lot more skeptically because you're losing people now.
Yeah, and I didn't look into this and in terms of what really a reservist is in Russia. I mean, compared to what you and I or what most Americans would think it is. It's like, it can be a forced type of a deal. I mean, if you're a reservist in the United States, I mean, you have made the effort. You have basically said, I'm going to do this, and you have volunteered to do this. I have this feeling that the reservists in Russia are just like, there's all these people on the rolls. And it's like, you are now reservists.
Right. Yeah, well, they're not letting any men out of the country who are fighting age.
Yeah. So
that tells you what the force is,
Yeah, it's a forced conscription of reservists, which is not really going to be very helpful to them in the long run.
No. And it will take some time to prepare those people, and time is short over there. You got to remember, Russia is a long way north of us, right? They're a lot closer to like starting to feel winter in real terms than we are.
Yeah, and it's you can't just take a bunch of people and put a gun in their hand and say go out and fight, because it takes training to learn how to operate these things. It's like
shoot each other, all that kind of stuff.
You will do a lot of dumb things. I mean, so it's this is not Putin's panacea by any stretch of imagination, but I don't know if this is a PR move, I guess, for him. It's like trying to show that I've got strength. I can call 300,000 people up. We just don't really know what the shape of those 300,000 are, but we are now speculating, and we think it's not going to be good, and it's not going to help their effort much at all.
No, so which leaves the other part of your question, which was about nuclear weapons. So if he is facing the prospect of losing, right, which he kind of is, right? He's pretty close to like having to think about, do I do everything I can to make this happen, or do I give up on it, right? And so we could be getting to the point where, that's his only option. Now, if you do that, like our nuclear policy says, if you use nuclear weapons, we nuke you, right? So that gets us in the game, right? You don't have to be NATO country to be eligible for that. And I believe all the NATO countries said in the last few days that they're going to act like they're going to treat Ukraine as a NATO country if something like that happens, right? Someone that we're bound to defend. So, if he does that, we're all in. We're going. It's World War III, and we'll find out, who's got what and who's really prepared to do this. And it'll be interesting to see, because I don't think it'll come out like Putin thinks.
Right. Yeah. Not by any stretch of imagination. I mean, you do not want. I don't think you want to play around with the nuclear trigger in essence, because it's going to be a whole lot worse for him if he does. I mean, there aren't a lot of scenarios here, if any, that really where he comes out looking good on this. He realistically, he would be better to just cut and run. Just go ahead and take the losses and deal with it. It's a huge embarrassment, but it's gone on for 7 months. This is not going well. And you keep throwing money and people, and you're losing people. This is, you will save yourselves, he'll save himself in the long run if he just does that. I mean, is he a popular?
Well,
is this
popular? Say Russia. I mean, it's the end of Putin as a leader, right?
Yeah.
If you can't deliver on this good, right, then they're going to find somebody who's more capable.
Right, and that's already
career's riding on this, which is something we need to take into account when we're figuring out what's going to happen. Is like it's all on the line for him personally.
Right, but the thing is that, I mean, what's his real escape plan here in this guy? I mean, there's already rumblings that this thing has gone on far too long, and so people he's losing the confidence of even of the people around him. So yeah, I mean, this president for life kind of a deal or whatever. He put this out there, and he's losing this gamble. I mean, if he had just left it alone, have not done this, I mean, he'd continue to be the ruler, and without I mean, he could do this. He wouldn't really get much of a challenge. But this, he risked a lot there, and I think he's lost a lot here. And his future as a leader severely in doubt here.
Right.
I mean, even if we're talking about Russia, and the way things go in these kind of countries, is that I mean, the faith of people around him, just like that, he's kind of a doomed leader here long term.
Yeah, it's like Hemingway said about going broke, right? Gradually, then all of a sudden, right? But gradually is happening, right?
Yeah.
It is. And you can see that, like, he's losing his hold on the country, and this is important to him as it means to maintain power. If he doesn't do this and maintain power, then that's why it's like you can't write off the possibility of the nukes. You can't write off the possibility of him finding other people to fight with him, other bad guys of the world, and deploying their military, their assets, and their weapons and so forth. Because he loses this, he loses everything. You can't go into a satellite country to take it over and not end up taking it over, right?
Right. Well said. All right, moving on. The Queen. I mean, so I'm trying to remember. It's like, so I think, did the Queen die when she passed away? Did we have a show, or did it happen just after the last show? I think it was just maybe just after the last show.
Yeah.
So and everything. So so they went into this 10-day period of mourning. Apparently, a lot of people were complaining about the kind of the wall-to-wall coverage of all things that are going on in the UK. But it was quite a spectacle in the sense of, I mean, Winston Churchill, 1965. I'm 6 years old. We it didn't get that kind of coverage, and so I don't really remember it. I mean, I have vague memories of John F. Kennedy when he died and everything like that, and the whole funeral deal with that. But Churchill being across the pond, it wasn't as big a deal. But here you have a monarch, 70 years on the throne, unbelievable reign. I've said, before, I'm not this big royal kind of fan or anything like this. I find it to be an interesting curiosity. It works for the UK. They've got a few nations that are part of the Commonwealth and whatnot. But we had this thing. I mean, the estimates are anywhere from 250,000 to 750,000 people waited in line to go through and pass by the coffin as it laid in state. 10 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours in some cases, just depends on when you arrived.
And all of them, like David Beckham, stood in the line.
Yeah.
No cutting, no special spot for David Beckham.
Yeah, he didn't play. Hey, I'm a soccer star. I'm like, what,
you're a soccer star at the back of the line, buddy.
He didn't have like a Disney fast pass that gets him to the other line or anything like that. So, I got to admire that, people like that waiting in line, but just the people who came from all over, not just the UK, but from all over the world for this very brief. I mean, they waited in line. I mean, if you think about the amount of time they waited in line to the amount of time they actually passed by the coffin, it doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, for you and me, it's like, why would you wait that long? But I mean, there, Great Britain, the queue is a very unique thing in the UK. I mean, this is the thing. This is part of their heritage almost, is that you queue up and you just do this. And I mean, it got cold overnight and all kinds of things. But the reports I was reading here and there were just people like they line up and they're like, oh, I just met these wonderful people. We had a great time. I do think that's also part of the British culture and things like that, is that they're probably more likely to do something like that also and strike up friendships and conversation than the average American would in a lot of these cases. So, it was just a very interesting thing to see. And it did bring the royals at least back together for this purpose, whether or not, Meghan, really kind of smoothed over some of the rough edges of things, and all that. I don't know in the long run, but everybody came together, and it was a very interesting thing to see. And now we have the reign of King Charles III, and we'll see where they go. But I will be curious, because the Queen was so popular that in places where like Australia, where they had taken up the idea of breaking away, of leaving, the Commonwealth, the Queen's popularity was really probably the thing that kept them together. King Charles is by no means anywhere near as popular as Queen Elizabeth. Charles had a few little things going on there in his life that, not quite up to royal standards initially, but I think it'd be a fine king, because they don't really have a lot. They just have these ceremonial duties. They're not going into the government. But I'm curious about, whether or not will Australia stick around, or will a parliament make a bigger push there? And also, as the Prince of Wales, he was kind of outspoken on things like climate change. As the king, I think he's going to be kind of restricted on that, right? I mean, he's going to have to be a little more mum on stuff like that.
Well, I thought the beauty of her was, 70 years, and there's not a lot of knowledge about what she thinks about the political affairs of the day, right? She obviously had thoughts and shared them with people, but not widely. She didn't get into those fights. Somebody said the other day, she gets intelligence briefings, right? So she's been getting intelligence briefings from the top of British intelligence for 70 years. So think about like all the stuff that she knows about all the bodies she knows where they are buried, right, around the world. Which, it must have been just a tremendous amount of knowledge. One of the funniest things I saw was a meme of has Keith Richards like holding a baby, playing with a baby. It says Keith Richards recalls the first time he met the Queen. Because we all come and go, but Keith Richards somehow defies all the odds. I also thought it was funny that Biden, they put Biden in the 14th row or whatever at the funeral. But Trump wrote, good, let's meet some third world country leader. But I guess the protocol said the Commonwealth country people went to the front, right? I mean, there's a long list of how to do these things, and any American president would have been sitting where he was sitting, and Trump can say what he wants, but that's how those things work. But yeah, it was pretty. That stuff was just good for like a little chuckle. But she managed to I can't think of her having a political enemy or a social enemy. There are people. even like Johnny Lydon, right, of the Sex Pistols, he came and sang that song, God Save the Queen, and he changed the lyrics to honor her, in her death. So this is a guy who made a lot of money off of mocking the monarchy, who, when it came time to do this, he showed that he just did it for the money, right? So, and didn't really hate her, which I think, I just don't know of anybody who hated her, right? You're in a position like that for 70 years. You don't make really any enemies. I mean, that's extraordinary. That's almost impossible, right? So, I mean, you got to hand it to her on that. As for Charles, so she was largely a silent queen, right? She didn't really say a lot. I was trying to think about, do I even know what her voice sounds like, right? Because she didn't say much, right? He does have some things to say on policy issues. So it'll be interesting. The crown will be in different hands. Different things will be getting emphasized and so forth. And it will be real interesting to see like how that pans out.
Yeah. And the other thing too, is just because of this, the way this is done. I mean, they've been planning this Operation London Bridge for a long time. The funeral's been decades in the making because, I mean, she lived to 96. I mean, you're ruling for 70 years. I mean, this was, this.
You can't say you're unprepared.
Yeah, you cannot say you're not prepared for this. But I was reading a little bit. I think it was the Earl of Marshall. I mean, it's that Earl's duty to actually orchestrate this whole thing, and the intricacy, all the pomp and circumstance, all the things that have to be done. That is a huge undertaking. I mean, all the protocol that has to be followed. You have got to do so many different things. It just was making my head spin as to what this guy, what his charge was, and to arrange and to pull together the teams and get everybody trained and get everybody in line there so that everything just kind of went off without a hitch. It was amazing, and it is for a lot of us. I mean, it really is a once in a lifetime type of a thing. I mean, Charles obviously being older. I mean, he's already 73 or something.
Yeah, he's 73, oldest person to ever become king.
So kind of like Joe Biden, right?
Yeah, that's right. He's the oldest president,
but with a better memory.
Yeah.
Charles probably will not have, he's not, his reign will be, if he's lucky, maybe 20 years or so. You never know. I mean, it could be a little longer, but somewhere in that range. So it'll be different. Say it goes for 20 years. Yeah, I might still be able to see that. Right. They'll be pushing the outer edge of my life expectancy in all likelihood. So, but it was just something to see. And I just don't know, because the Queen was so beloved by so many people. I think even if it's 10 or 15 or 20 years down the line, you'll have the same type of ceremony because that's what protocol says. But I don't know that there'll be the same level of outpouring,
right?
That's right. For Prince Charles as there will, for now the King, as there will have been for the Queen for his mother. Anyway, right. Just amazing.
I don't know that there's ever going to be that kind of love for him that there was for her.
Right, and she was unique. I don't even know. I don't know that you can find a head of state, someone who like that would exude that same type of thing. I mean, because of that longevity, and she just kind of stuck to her knitting. And as you said, she didn't speak that much. You'd have to watch the little films or whatever, like her Christmas message or something like that, because you just didn't get a lot of public speaking for her, at least not for us on this side. I mean, maybe and I wasn't a royal watcher, so I didn't follow. I didn't just every time she was on something, I didn't listen for everything. So anyway, all right. Now that we come back to this side of the pond, Joe Biden, 60 Minutes interview. He declared the pandemic is over.
Yeah, right, and that we would defend Taiwan.
Right.
And then his staff came out and said the pandemic is not over and the Taiwan policy has not changed. So, so there's a couple of issues there, right? This happens all the time. He goes out and says these things, and then that's not okay. So who's president, right? Who do we listen to? Do we just disregard whatever the actual guy says and wait on the staff cleanup, or do we take his pronouncements? Because this particular pronouncement is kind of problematic for him on a couple of levels. One is you can't, if you don't have a pandemic, if you don't have an emergency, you can't get emergency use authorizations for additional vaccines. For another, he justified forgiving student loan debt on the basis of the COVID emergency that was still ongoing. Obviously, if he's saying it's not still ongoing, then, they haven't forgiven any of the loans yet, that, maybe we aren't able to do that anymore. So that had to be cleaned up. The Chinese, what do they know what to think? Because, whatever he says about China policy is disputed by the people who work for it. So, I mean, there's some real questions about, is he in charge of the country, right? Because, whatever he says, it's not really what we're going to go by. Okay, well, which of his statements are operative, and who has the right to go say the president wasn't right and that's not what we're going to do? He's the president, right? As bad as he is who got elected. So, it's his view that we should be operating under, not, his staff and, the people who work in the White House.
Yeah. And I mean, on Taiwan, didn't he say something before about it? And they went through the same exact thing. I mean, he blurted out this thing, and and they had to walk that back as well.
And then Pelosi said the same thing, and they walked that back too. And so, it's like there's some people in the White House who are actually running the country, and we don't really know who they are, but they're not for Taiwan, and they are for extending COVID.
Yeah, I mean, the COVID thing is, this whole pandemic thing is problematic. You just mentioned, some of the more salient facts of this. It's just that, and I mean, we're spending a lot of money. I mean, it goes also to benefits that are being doled out, right? We've been doling out extra benefits because of COVID. If the pandemic's over, and there's a lot of, there's pushback on some of this too from Democrats and others who say, but we're still losing 400 plus people a day to this. There's a whole bunch of people who've got long haul COVID. How can you say it's over? So you've got that, and then you've got Republicans who are saying like, well, okay, fine, but going back to your points, it's like, then what about all these other measures? It's like, if you're saying that, then you have no emergency powers. Therefore, a lot of stuff you're doing has got to go out the window. You have no authority. I will be on the student loan thing. I'll be very curious to see where we go, because, as soon as he announced it, the process began with all these, with the student loan servicers to say, this is how you apply and whatever, it's going to take some time to go through all of this. I got to vet and verify and stuff like that. But, it was questionable at the time as to whether or not, if they hadn't already kind of pushed the envelope with that as it was,
right.
Right. And so
it was the flimsiest of excuses, and he just spit that one right out. He just gave that one right away.
Yeah. And so he's not strengthening his position with this at all.
Yeah. They have to, it's like we said at the time too, these guys are never going to give up this power, right? They're not programmed to ever, once they get power, to ever relinquish it for any reason. So yeah, they have to keep COVID, and they have to keep us afraid of it, which is sort of its own thing, to make sure that, we don't just start ignoring all the warnings and not doing the things they want us to do, which is largely happening. Like you notice, like we're throwing away millions and millions of vax. We're paying $28 a dose. They cost $1 a dose to make. Think about that the next time the government wants to negotiate drug prices. They're not good at it. But we don't have no one's taking them. No one wants them. There was a story in front of the Post yesterday, I guess, that, less than 20% of the kids that were now eligible have gotten them, right? In DC, it's lower than that. And so, the mayor, superintendent of schools, they wanted to keep everybody out of DC schools that wasn't vaxxed. And they're like, well, 40% of your kids aren't vaxxed. So you're going to have school and not let 40% of the people in? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. They were a little slower, but I mean,
I like that.
The edit team. And the other one I saw was someone said, Biden White House officials during the 60 Minutes interview, and it just showed different people going. It was pretty funny.
Did you see that Tim Allen thing though? I mean, where he is like, Biden appears on 60 Minutes, but he asked how long the program was, and the left went absolutely bonkers, on that.
That's right. It's not true.
Yeah. No, but
he says, I'm really sharp, man. I'm really doing good. But follow my schedule. Like, come on.
To me, I firmly believe that part of the the big part of the student loan thing scheme was he's trying to buy some younger votes going into the election, but now and like I said, flimsy of reasons, excuse to be able to do so. If this somehow does not pass the muster here, and they actually find out that they can't do it, and they pull this out, I mean that hurts them there. But you also have, like, what about these people in the military that have either been fired or they're not able to do things because they weren't vaxxed? It's like,
right.
What happens with this policy? It's like,
right.
If you've been fired, can you come back? I mean, it's like, do you have some recourse to maybe sue the government or something? I mean,
you can't meet recruiting goals, right? They're running out of soldiers because they kicked a bunch out for no reason.
Yeah. And now
that wasn't well thought out at all.
Yeah, no.
I mean, you got to think about the COVID, the totality of the COVID response, right? The first thing we did was try to figure out how to treat it with the people who already had it, and try to figure out the vaxes, right? That was the part during Trump's presidency. And then when it changed over to Biden, then it was just vax, right? And it was just imposed vax law, and whatever happened, to people on the vaxes. And like, you're seeing a lot of these people, passing away now and so forth under weird circumstances, athletes and whatnot, no thought of turning back, no thought of rethinking any of that. Just make people do it, because remember, with Democrats, coercion is the point. The idea is to coerce.
Yeah, I was realizing the last few weeks, I was like, I don't even know what I did with my Vax card. I used to have it somewhere nearby. It's like, if somebody ever asked me for one, I'd have to actually log into my health insurance, with my provider, and say, here's proof, and then my booster shot came, got it at CVS. And so it's interesting. I mean, because the initial shot was recorded, and got onto my health record with my health insurance, but my booster shot, which was done at CVS, was not. It's not on my record, but it is. CVS is keeping track of it, so it's kind of located in two different places. Hopefully, I never have to prove anything to anybody for bad. I mean, it's just we went through that period and everything like that, but just I don't know. This government is just really screwed up. That's all I can say. I want to just briefly touch on Kamala Harris. Is like, she cannot. I don't understand this. I mean, this thing popped up, on Fox News, and it was about what she was talking about: community banks, how important they are because they're in the community or something like this. It's like, is like, can you shoot me now? I mean, how many more times does you have to keep?
Come on, asteroid, make it happen, man. I will say this about that: of all her rants, that one struck me as one of the more coherent. Right. The thing about what does set community banks apart is they in theory have a better sight line on what's needed in that community. So, but I mean, she does this all the time, and you can't say, oh, this time she was actually aware of what was going on, because she's been unaware so many of the other times. But apparently she refuses to prepare. Right, she doesn't know what her next appearance is, and she doesn't know what those people talk about, and they're cramming stuff in her hand at the last minute, and she puts no thought in it, and she goes out and just says whatever comes to her mind. And these are not topics. She was a prosecutor, right? These are not topics that she's ever tried to consider or learn more about before, and now she's being caught not knowing about them.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that we're this far along into her tenure as the VP, and we constantly get this. I mean, it's one thing after another. I mean, she is just so prone to this, and it's like, you would think an intelligent person in a position like that would actually say, okay, I've done this a couple of times here. I really have to do this better. I've got to actually prepare. I've got to study this out a little bit so I don't get caught on camera, doing this thing where people are poking fun at me and just exposing me. But the fact that she continues to do this just shows this. I think it shows also an utter disregard for the office of vice president. On top of that,
Right.
she is not willing to prepare for this, and she's disrespecting the office. She's disrespecting all of us, that taking us lightly, that we will just think, oh, haha, funny or whatever. We won't notice that what's going on.
Yeah, they won't. That's what bugs me, is the notion that they won't notice if I just BS my way through this, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, everybody, like, if anyone who's in her position and has to appear in public you're not going to be max prepared for everything. And sometimes you are just sort of mouthing the platitudes, right? But if every speech is ridiculous, senseless, non-connected platitudes, then it's not, bad scheduling. It's you not preparing. And it's like she thinks, oh, these idiots do not realize that I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. Yeah, we do, lady. We do. And it's sad. And, don't pretend that you are. And it's like, I saw something the other day, and I can't believe this is true, but they said Democrat presidential 2024 field, and it's like 24% are for Biden, 11% are for her. Nobody else is over about 5 or 6. So is she really like their on deck choice? If it was Biden, another thing got said in that 60 Minutes interview is he's not really sure he's going to run in 2024. Some of the health stuff, the pace of this, he talked about the pace of it. And you can see him getting impatient with things. It's like, I just cannot move this stuff like I want it. And, there's too many things in my way. And, he could be fine sitting in Delaware those 4 years, spending all the money Hunter extorted out of foreign countries. But she's now, she's their front runner. I don't think that would last long. I think if he ever says he's not going to run, then I think a lot of people get into the game, like Gavin Newsom and so forth, and she disappears as a front runner.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, because right now, people, if a bunch of people tried to jump in on this at this point for 2024, then there would be a lot of narrative about the fact that Biden's basically a lame duck at this point, and what's the issue, and they just start piling on, and people start positioning, and then it looks like disarray and dissatisfaction within the Democrat Party, and so they don't want that yet. I mean, there's some of those things that are out there, but Harris, she hasn't done anything that shows she's presidential. She is continuing to shoot herself in the foot and just making things worse. She would have been better off to be a lot more low profile VP and not do a lot of engagements. You can stay out of the way, appear, do some glad handing or whatever, not really doing a lot of public speaking. VPs are not known for, it's there as this, as the number 2 person, but they really don't have a heck of a lot of duties in general. And if you stay out of the way, your public perception is like, okay, well, I guess I don't really probably
didn't
fine.
do anything wrong.
Right.
Okay. But here's the thing about it. She did have a job, right? Her job was border czar.
Yeah.
Okay. There's few things in this country more off the rails right now than the border, right? So, to me, if she goes down there and she's, regularly seen there, and she's riding with Border Patrol people, and she's, actually got her fingers in the pie down there trying to talk to people and hold meetings and hold summits and whatever, nothing substantive may have come from any of it. But if she looked involved, and they could say, oh, we have one fewer immigrant. Yeah, it is secure. That's right. She said it is secure. So what that shows you is, the thing that she was supposed to do, she just took a wild guess, right? Yeah, well, people notice if I say this, probably not. Okay, so you have not delved into, like, you're not paying attention to what's going on in the border, the thing you're the czar of at all, right? So, that would have been, she didn't really have to produce a lot of deliverables there. She didn't really have to change the policy a whole lot. But like, if help managing that policy, there's probably things that the Biden administration could do where it could pursue the policy direction it wants to, but not necessarily the, have the bad results it's had with a little better management. But, you won't know that because the person you assigned to watch that is not watching it. So, she's sitting up here saying it's all, we're done next, right? She had a real opportunity there, and she wouldn't have even had to done a whole lot. Just look concerned and spend a lot of time there and meet with the people and, take all those Democrat border congressmen down there and get them all some good pub, hey, we're rolling up our sleeves, getting after it over here, because, there's a debate over what immigration policy could be. It worked under Trump. It doesn't work under Biden, but the country is not convinced to do it the Trump way. There's still people to whom you can make the case to do it the Democrat way, right? But they didn't do that. Their choice instead was to just, basically do nothing and let it take care of itself.
Yeah. And that just leads right into, all the things that have been going on with Texas and with Florida. We have, as the media calls them migrants, I call them illegals, being, dropped off in the front of the vice president's home. DeSantis flew a bunch of them up to Martha's Vineyard, one of the playgrounds of the rich and famous liberals and things like that, which has stirred a hue and cry from the libs about this. And, really, we have a sheriff in Behar County in Texas he was looking into this. I think there's some class action suit for DeSantis for like kidnapping. You mentioned Gavin Newsom. He's been jawboning about all of this and stuff like that. I think Mitch McConnell said he doesn't have any problem, with sending these people to the blue states. Look, if you're coming over the border and you're coming into the country illegally, exactly, what kind of rights do you have to begin with? You're not legally in the country, and these liberals seem to say, but they didn't consent, they were deceived, and all of this, they were lured to Martha's Vineyard on the false hope of this, that, and the other.
They weren't lured; they signed releases. They were lured, nothing. So here's the thing about it: they were going to get, immigrant services somewhere, right? Whether it was Eagle Pass, Texas, or Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, right? And those services were going to have shortcomings, whether delivered at Eagle Pass or Martha's Vineyard. In Eagle Pass, what does Bob say?
It's a long one.
Right. That's right. That's right. Far worse to care. Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, with each giggle. That's right. It's really brought a lot of shame on that office. So, and I think people, I think presidents from now on are going to make sure they have someone who's reasonably competent in there. I think the idea of an affirmative action hire is going to be considered tried and discarded. But where were we? We were talking about.
Well, you were talking about Eagle Pass and all these.
Right. So somewhere you're going to get services, right? So those people just got their services, in Massachusetts as opposed to Texas. Now, what's happening here is, the rest of the nation is getting a little taste of what the border people deal with every day, right? And it's like, oh, wow, that's horrible. You can't do that. It's like, well, you do it to us every day and you don't care. And it's been going on for decades and you've never cared. Okay, so now it's on your doorstep a little bit. So all of a sudden, we've got your attention. Okay, so the polling on that is pretty good for DeSantis. Republicans like it, independents like it, Democrats not so much, right? So, it wasn't a bad thing. They're not, somebody might sue him, but they're not going to be there's no crime committed here. I'll tell you something, old story. I went to jail one time, right? So there's 2 cells in the jail, right? And one of them's got like 3 people and 2 of them are asleep, right? The other one's got like 15 people and they're all arguing and fighting. And I asked, well, like, you put me in the cell with the quiet people. And the lady, the bailiff, said to me, like, sir, your time for you to figure out where you wanted to be was before you did whatever they brought you in here for, right? Okay, so once you're in jail, once you've broken the law and been apprehended, it's not up to you what happens, right? We have some 8th Amendment limits on being ridiculously cruel and unusual punishment. But it's up to them how they incarcerate you and adjudicate you and so forth. If you don't want to be adjudicated in the way that they do it, don't break the law, right? So, I don't feel a lot of sympathy for the people who got taken around the country, because they shouldn't have been here to start with, right? And they were not starved, as many of them are in Texas, and they were not raped, right? They were put on a plane and taken to the one of the most exclusive communities in the country, right? And the people, they all proudly came out, because it was for one night, right? It was this temporary problem, right? We all got out and we made soup and took it to the nice people and, went and met them and hugged them and told them we wished them the best and put them on the bus the next day to get them off the island to somewhere that better has services, okay? Eagle Pass, they don't get to do that, right? Eagle Pass just got to eat it, right? So that's why I'm saying, you're going to see more of this, and it's time for us to come to terms with what it takes to. I've actually gotten into some conversations on Twitter with people in the last week or so. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a terrible problem, and they'll say, well, we don't see you guys coming to the table. Like, we've come to we're the ones trying to deal with it, right? You're the ones saying just let it keep happening, okay? So now you agree that it needs to be dealt with. That's good. Let's sit down and deal with it.
All right, I'll let you pick one last topic before we go to our dear late friend that we want to discuss.
Okay, let's see. Did not move me off of that one. You did not move me off of that one. I went to the wrong page. Okay, let's see. There was a couple of those on here.
So much to choose from.
There is. I think the as for the special master. The Justice Department, they really don't want this guy to get to look at this stuff. Okay. And you got to think, why is the Justice Department fighting against this so hard? Okay. And then they're going to 11th Circuit, right? Oh no, he can't look at any of these things. It's like, this guy's a retired federal judge. One of the things they're worried about is this guy signed one of those FISA warrants on Carter Page, Fisk, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court warrants. He signed the fourth of the 4 warrants, right? And he now knows, he doesn't just think, he knows that he was misled into signing that the Department of Justice pretended it had information supporting that affidavit that was not, in fact, true, right? So he is very leery of them lying to him, and he is very open to the possibility that the government is not being straight with him. And that is the kryptonite with Democrats, because if you have people who understand that the government, the DOJ, the FBI will lie to achieve political ends, then you understand a lot of what they're doing and you can be aware of it.
All right. Okay. So let me see if I can get through this. This type of thing is always rough on me. So on, I guess it was on Monday morning, right? Is that when I put that out? So Monday morning, I got a phone call from what the phone showed that was Mal Kline. Mal and I had worked together for a number of years. He was executive director of Accuracy in Academia. Prior to that, he had served as a senior editor for the National Journalism Center that Stan Evans had run. Really, one of the top guys at NJC. Just a really good, really great guy. And I was surprised because
y'all were born the same day, right?
Yeah, we were born the same day. We were both born the same day, same year. We were exactly the same age. And I was surprised that the phone was ringing with his phone number, because Mal and I haven't really spoken on the phone for a while. He had COPD. This, of course, and so that had reduced his ability to breathe without an oxygen tank, and his voice had been reduced to a whisper. He had been a lifetime smoker, and he loved his cigars. And his diet was, I will say, his diet was a lot like Stan Evans, but a little bit better. He was a heartier eater than Stan, but Stan Evans was known for coffee and a cigarette was pretty much the thing that he went on. Mal was a little bit better than that. Mal did like food. He loved his scrapple coming from Pennsylvania. And he loved a good dessert and everything like that. But it was his wife who had informed me that that Mal had passed away unexpectedly, he was sleeping downstairs, and she went to go see him, and he had died overnight. I'm grateful that it was a peaceful death in that sense. I am definitely mourning the loss of Mal, but I had a very interesting conversation with Dan Flynn, who had been a previous executive director of Accuracy in Academia and has written several books, and just a great writer, and one of those rare young guys who was a diehard anti-communist. And Dan had worked with us for a number of years too. And so Dan was putting together a piece on Mal for the American Spectator, and just kind of reminded me of some of the things about Mal. About we never saw him get angry, and I reflected upon the fact that Mal didn't have the easiest life in a lot of ways. He didn't go for the brass ring. He never made a lot of money. They kind of survived. I'm kind of concerned about what the long term is for his widow and his kids, but overall, he never complained about that. His oldest daughter had some issues. Never complained about that. They spent a lot of time dealing with that. Their younger daughter, who was born a little bit later in their lives, had some form of autism, and so that was a challenge. Never complained about it. Was just a great dad and a great husband. And he was a faithful, Catholic. And so we had a lot of good conversations about a lot of different things over the years. So I'll miss Mal, and I think based on what I've seen on Facebook, a lot of people. I did when I was going over Dan's piece today, I had completely forgotten about Mal's love of Frank Sinatra.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
about that.
Yeah, he was good on that. So I mean, I will miss Mal. It's for me, it's definitely a premature death. I will be honest, I didn't think Mal was necessarily going to live to 85, given some of the health problems, but he was managing it and he never complained. So, just hats off to Mal Kline and all the work that he did with our students. He really did a great job with our interns and helping craft their skills and hone their writing skills over the years, as he had done when he'd spent his 20 plus years at NJC. So Brian, that's up now. It's for you.
So, that's one of the things I was going to talk about is, you can tell like the mark people make in life, but what young people say about them. And, you go back and look at the stuff on Facebook, and a lot of those students came back and said, yeah, Mal made a lot of difference in my life. There's a lot of, like we were talking about earlier, most people, especially in the business we're in, you make people angry, right? There's it's an emotional thing, and there's arguments, and you say stuff you don't really need to say, and I don't know anybody that didn't like Mal, right? He was just the quintessential nice guy, just super nice guy, right? Would talk to anybody. Like I first met him at ATR, the Grofers meeting, right? Oh, yeah. And it's like he doesn't, that room's full of, there's 80, 90 people, 79 to 89 of whom are more powerful and worth your time to kiss up to, whatever, than me, right? I'm the communications director of CEI at the time, right? So he go right up to him. He talks, it's like he doesn't snob you at all. He's glad to know you, right? And so a good man, as you say, a good Catholic. We had a lot of conversations about that, and very devoted to the church and to Jesus and to God. So I'm sorry to see him go. He's a good man.
Well, may he rest in peace, and may his family get some comfort and all that. All right, everyone. Kind of a somber note, but we figured that Mal was owed that tribute at the very least. Thank you for joining us again this week. Please, as always, stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.